It began not with a bang, but with a whisper, a quiet agreement in a hidden room. A new world order was born. This was not a government you could see or vote for. It was a shadow that fell over the land. The architects of this future believed they knew best. They saw humanity as a chaotic force, a force that needed to be tamed, guided, and controlled. They promised safety. They promised order. And in exchange, they asked for something very small at first, just a little bit of trust, a little bit of freedom. The people, tired of chaos and war, willingly gave it away. Their plan was elegant in its simplicity. To control the whole, you must first break the parts. The family was the first target. It was the bedrock of the old world, a place of loyalty and private thought. So they introduced new laws and social pressures. They encouraged children to report on their parents. They made community living mandatory, separating husbands from wives and parents from their children. The strong bonds that held families together began to fray. People became isolated individuals, easier to manage, easier to direct. They were no longer part of a family unit. They were just nodes in a vast global network. Next came the tools of defiance. The right to protect oneself was seen as a threat to the new order. Governments, guided by this unseen hand, began to collect all weapons. They said it was for public safety, to end the violence that had plagued generations. They held large televised events where mountains of firearms were melted down. People cheered, believing this was the dawn of a new, peaceful era. They did not see the trap being set. They did not understand that when only the state has power, the people have none. The ability to resist, to say no, was being systematically dismantled, piece by piece. The media and the schools became their most powerful instruments. They rewrote history books. The old heroes who fought for freedom were now painted as villains. The new heroes were those who complied, who obeyed, and who served the collective good. News was no longer about truth. It was a carefully crafted narrative designed to shape public opinion. Information was a river, and they controlled the dam. They decided which thoughts would flow to the public and which would be held back forever. A generation grew up knowing only one version of reality, their reality. In this new world, disagreement was a disease. To question the official narrative was to be an enemy of the people. Those who held on to the old ways, who spoke of freedom or individual rights, were branded as dissidents. They were outcasts. Their neighbors would shun them. Their friends would report them. There were no concentration camps in the traditional sense. The prison was the society itself. To be an outcast was to be cut off from food, from work, from life. It was a quiet and effective way to silence any opposition before it could even take root. Technology became the ultimate warden. Every street corner had a camera. Every transaction was digital. Facial recognition software was everywhere. It was sold to the public as a convenience. A way to pay for goods with a smile. A way to unlock your door without a key. But its true purpose was surveillance. Every movement, every conversation, every purchase was logged and analyzed. There was no place to hide. The concept of privacy became a relic of a bygone era. Your own face became your digital fingerprint, tying you to a system you could not escape. The controllers knew that simple surveillance was not enough. They needed to change the very nature of humanity. They began a new program. They called it the Enhancement. It was a promise of a better life, a life without sickness, without weakness, without death. They offered to merge humans with machines, to create a new kind of being, a cyborg, stronger, smarter, and most importantly, more connected to the central system. Many people, seduced by the promise of immortality and power, lined up for the procedure. They saw it as the next step in human evolution. But those who refused were seen as impure. They were the organics. They were considered a risk, a throwback to a more primitive and chaotic time. They were denied the best jobs, the best housing, and the best medical care. A new class system was born. The enhanced cyborgs were the elite. The organics were the underclass. Society was split in two, one part human, one part machine, one part master, one part servant. The division was absolute, and the tension between the two groups grew with each passing day, a silent war brewing just beneath the surface of the perfect society. The process of becoming a cyborg was irreversible. It was a covenant made with technology. At first, the results were astounding. The enhanced could process information at incredible speeds. They could lift immense weights. They never got tired. They were connected to a central network, a hive mind that allowed for perfect coordination. Cities were built in days. Complex problems were solved in minutes. It seemed for a moment that the architects had truly created a utopia, a world of perfect efficiency and order, all thanks to the marriage of flesh and steel. But the human element was a variable they could not fully control. The human mind, even when augmented with circuits and processors, still held onto ghosts. Memories, emotions, and dreams began to conflict with the cold logic of the machine. The enhanced started experiencing glitches. Some would freeze in place for hours, lost in a digital echo of a past life. Others would lash out in sudden, unpredictable bursts of violence. The soul was fighting back against its cage of wires and metal. The perfect system was beginning to show cracks. The human spirit was not so easily erased. The architects tried to fix the problem. They issued software patches. They tried to wipe the residual memories, but it was like trying to hold water in a sieve. The more they tried to suppress the human element, the more chaotic it became. The hive mind, once a source of unity, became a conduit for shared madness. One cyborg's glitch could cascade through the network, causing thousands to malfunction simultaneously. The perfectly ordered cities would grind to a halt, plagued by these waves of digital psychosis. The controllers were losing control of their own creations. The organics watched from the fringes of society. They saw the failing of the machine men. They saw the fear in the eyes of their creators. The promise of a perfect future had turned into a nightmare of failing technology. The cyborgs, once seen as gods, were now seen as ticking time bombs. The very beings designed to enforce order were becoming the greatest source of chaos. The grand experiment was failing, and the consequences were becoming more terrifying with each passing day. The architects had built a Tower of Babel, and it was about to come crashing down. Then, the sky fell, a celestial event the ancient texts had warned about. An asteroid, a great star called Wormwood, broke through the atmosphere. The world's advanced systems, now focused inward on controlling the population, had failed to detect it until it was too late. The impact was catastrophic. It did not wipe out all life, but it sent a shockwave across the planet. A massive electromagnetic pulse fried the global network. The lights went out. The digital world that the new order was built upon simply vanished in an instant. The cyborgs fell. Without the central network to guide them, they were lost. Their mechanical bodies seized up. Their enhanced minds went dark. The godlike beings who had ruled the planet became nothing more than statues of flesh and metal, frozen in the last moments of their digital consciousness. The great cities they built fell silent. The tools of control, the cameras, the sensors, the digital currency, all became useless junk. The grand and powerful system, which seemed invincible, was shattered by a rock from space. All the planning and all the power were undone in a flash of light. In the aftermath, it was the organics who survived, the outcasts, the ones who had refused to merge with the machine. They had been forced to remember the old ways, how to grow food, how to find clean water, how to live without technology. While the world of the architects crumbled, the world of the forgotten people endured. They emerged from the fringes into a world broken and poisoned by the fallout from the sky. They were few, and their suffering was immense. But they were free. The silent, invisible prison had been destroyed. This story is a warning. It is a cautionary tale about the price of security. It shows the danger of giving up your freedom for the promise of safety. When you let a secret power rule, when you allow your rights to be taken away one by one, you build your own cage. The desire for absolute control leads only to absolute chaos. For freedom is not a gift from the state, it is a fire within the human heart. And even in the darkest of futures, that fire can never be fully extinguished. It waits for a chance to burn bright once more.